Daily Bible Time, Tuesday morning, Dominic Steele here, and look, I have at home a folder that I keep there which has written on its spine, Rejection Collection. And when you look inside, it's all the letters that I wrote over the years applying for different jobs, mostly jobs in radio stations, various resumes that I compiled, trying to portray my suitability for a particular role, and it's got all the letters of rejection that I've received over the years. From years ago, I got one from 3NE Wangaratta. Dear Sir, thank you very much for sending the audition tape and resume for the recent announcing position at 1566 3NE, but no thanks. Then when 2WG Wagga wrote to say, they didn't say Dear Sir, they at least said Dear Dominic. I got so many rejection letters that I started the file. I mean, other people collect stamps and stickers. I collected the rejection letters. When I wrote a job application, I sent a letter, a resume. And because most of the applications have been for radio things, I sent a recording of me doing radio stuff. Now, a resume is really good because it allows the person who reads it to have a summary glance of the kind of person they're dealing with, the kind of person you are. We write letters, we write resumes, we get letters back, and it's a cool thing, a resume, because when you see someone's resume, you can get just an overview picture of them. And what we're going to do is we're going to be thinking about the resume of Jesus. And so what I thought we'd do is we'd write a resume for Jesus. The man Jesus, he grew up in Judea. He grew up in really the household of Mr. and Mrs. Nobody in Bethlehem. He grew up practicing carpentry. And then in his late 20s, he started a not very impressive rabble of a movement. He had a group of people, mostly fishermen, follow him around. And then he died an early, horrible, humiliating death in 33 AD. He tried to start a new movement, but then like all the other revolutionary leaders of the time, he was executed. But 30 years later, in Turkey, in a little town called Colossae, there's a small group of people who get a letter from a Jew called Paul, which makes some astonishing claims about this tradesman, Jesus. And you know what's even more remarkable? This little group of people, the Colossians, the Christians in Colossae, they actually believe the astonishing claims made by the Apostle Paul about this tradesman called Jesus. Now, the resume. First thing, what was his name? Well, if you look back to the very first verse of Colossians 1, and you need a Bible, you can see that Paul writes, Paul, an apostle of Christ Jesus by God's will, and Timothy, our brother. So the person whose resume we're about to compile in verses 15 to 23 of Colossians 1, his name in verse 1 is Christ Jesus. The man's named Christ Jesus or Jesus Christ. Now, is that like Dominic Steele, D. Steele, J. Christ? No. Christ is not a surname. Christ is a job description. A job description, I mean, it's a term like journalist or plumber or secretary or builder or doctor or prime minister. And you can say, hang on, well, I know what a journalist does. I know what a plumber does. I know what a secretary does. I know what a doctor does. I think I know what a prime minister does. But what does a Christ do? Well, the Greek word Christ is the same as the Hebrew word Messiah. And the Jews at the time of Jesus, they'd spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years waiting for the coming of the Messiah, the Christ. The Christ, in the Jewish worldview, would rule the nations God's way. The kings actually would have to give honor, pay homage to the Christ. And so it's amazing, phenomenal for them to hear somebody say, Jesus Christ. He's saying Jesus, God's King. Jesus, God's ruler. Jesus, God's Messiah. More tomorrow about the resume for Jesus on Daily Bible Time.